Shara Carruthers from Bliss Body and Soul. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, lifestyle consultant, and a health and wellness mentor, particularly for women who feel like they've lost their mojo somewhere along the path. I say this because I know what this feels like, whether it's from work, or career, or whether it's from, dealing with family, or raising a family, or just putting your energies in the wrong place. And these are women who are looking for a natural and a more personalized approach to getting it back. So today, as I mentioned, we were talking about how to get started with Ayurveda. And I'm not quite sure how much you know about Ayurveda, and I'm not going to talk too much about exactly what it is. So I'm kind of coming to this with an assumption that you've got a sense for what it's about, or at least you've worked out that it is something that you are interested in. So let me just say, just to kind of give you some sense, let me just say that Ayurveda, no matter what you've heard, Ayurveda is a process of getting to know yourself so that you can make choices for everything, for food, for environments, for people that you spend your time with, for exercise, for everything, so that you can make powerful choices. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you can make choices that will support your health and your wellness. It can be many other things. It's treatment of disease and various other things. But for folks who are looking to apply Ayurveda to feeling good and to looking great and to being as authentic as they can and to connecting passionately with the world, you have to understand that it's about knowing yourself so that you can make powerful choices. And part of the reason I say that is because so many of us, if you just take a moment just to think about what drives the choices that you make, mostly it's what you've always done. And what that means is it's going to be your cultural conditioning is probably a lot of it. Your automatic emotional response. So that's a pattern that's ingrained that you've probably been following for your entire life. So Ayurveda is about moving us beyond those patterns. It's about connecting us deeply with ourselves so that we can make choices for everything that are healthy for us, that are going to support us being our best selves. And so how do we do that? Well, the first thing you do, and a lot of people, they hear about it and they think, I want to change my diet, I want to change this or that. The first thing you really have to do is get to know yourself. Get to know yourself. And what is that about? Well, once we get a sense, once we actually start paying attention to ourselves and knowing how we act and interact, how we process the things that we come into contact with, how we eat on a daily basis, how often we sleep, how our digestive and elimination systems actually work on a regular basis, we have a foundation for starting to make some change. We have an understanding of how close we are currently living to our optimal. Normally what we do is we think, oh, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to change this, I'm going to do that, without really an understanding of what we're working from. And so getting to know yourself is really key. And that's why I almost always recommend that most people start out their Ayurvedic journey by understanding their dosha. Learn your dosha. And a lot of people like that because it's quizzes and that helps. And I've got a quiz on my site and I'll put a link to that quiz. But really not just you learning your dosha to use it as a basis for knowing what type of diet you should have, or what type of movement you should have, or what type of what sort of ways that what things you should avoid, or what things you should gravitate towards. I think that we set Ayurveda up as a way of, we set Ayurveda up like that in a lot of ways. Learn your dosha so that you can learn how to live like your dosha. The thing is, you aren't your dosha. You are you. Every person is completely individual. And so as you launch into this, or as you step onto this path, if you can embrace that your dosha will give you some beautiful insights about what your tendencies are, how you tend to get sick, how you tend to interact with the world, the kinds of foods and environments that may be great for you or that may not be great for you. It's just a beginning. And so diving in, getting your dosha, or learning your dosha, but not necessarily as a roadmap for how to live, more as a set of informations and inputs that help to deepen your connection to yourself so that you can begin to tune in a little bit more to how the foods you eat impact you and what drives your choices. Your dosha will help. It'll give you some insights about that. So definitely seek out an Ayurvedic practitioner or an online quiz. There's tons of them. And see, and don't just learn your dosha by name. I'm a Pitta or I'm a Vata. Seek to understand what that means. Because as I said to you before, your dosha will give you some sense for what your natural strengths and your natural challenges are. So that's the first one. Get to know yourself. The second is understanding that health and wellness, our ability to truly be our authentic selves, and that's really all we're here for, is to find a way to be our authentic selves. The only way to do that is from a foundation of wellness, from a foundation of ease and stability, from a foundation of feeling strong and light and connected. And in order to do that, we have to start by building self-care into our lives. If you think about the way self-care, the part self-care plays in your life, sometimes it's a bit of an afterthought. For a lot of us, we don't even know what self-care looks like for us, right? We've got messages from the media about green smoothies and lots of yoga and, a couple of days at the spa, every few months, or the odd massage. But really, we have to begin to understand what self-care actually looks like for us individually, and then build that into our day. The foundation of the Ayurvedic lifestyle is what we call dinacharya. Dinacharya is a Sanskrit word, and it means a daily routine. And it acknowledges the fact that what we do every day matters far more than what we do every once in a while. And so we need to get to know ourselves so that we can understand, what feeds us, what stops us, what makes us come alive, and then begin to build that into our day. Build those things into our day, bit by bit. Ayurveda has lots and lots of suggestions for what that could look like. Things like how to eat, things like what to eat and when to eat. Things like how much sleep to get and when to sleep. Things like relative to the seasons, what to do during the spring versus the winter. But what's really important first is that you understand what you're building. You understand that your goal is to build self-care, even the smallest and the simplest act of self-care, into your life every single day. So those are really my 2 points, but I'm going to give you a couple of more tips on the last one. What we typically do is we start by wanting to overhaul everything. Right, well, if it's all about self-care, then I'll change my diet and I'll do this and I'll start sleeping at a better time and I'll take this and I'll do that. The challenge and the problem with that is that it rarely ever sticks, right? It's when we try to bite off too big of a piece, something changes, as it inevitably does. We hit a breakdown and then we fall right back into our old patterns. Ayurveda really wants everybody to understand that we are all playing the long game, right? They say life is short, but we've got to play the long game in order to continue to build this deep connection with ourselves. I often say that this practice of Ayurveda is like a spiral. We start on the outside with this as this person who is socially conditioned and who's living in patterns, and then we slowly spiral in towards ourselves, right? Towards ourselves at the center. That process of spiraling in can be years long, and it can be all about trying something, getting a sense for how that feels and how that works in your body and your mind and how that feeds you, and then making a choice about whether you want to continue with that or not. It's this constant process of trial and error. And so what I usually say to people is, don't start with what challenges you most. Don't start with what challenges you most. Start with what matters most. Start with what matters most. And typically that's going to be something, it might be something small, just the smallest thing, because what matters most is that we keep going. What matters most is that we feel confident and that we feel engaged and that we feel intentional about what we're doing. And that is part of the reason why starting with your daily routine, even the smallest thing, maybe waking up at the same time every day, or maybe waking up and tuning into your digestion a few times during the day, or scraping your tongue once a day, or something. Ayurveda, as I mentioned, Ayurveda's got lots of things, and I can't go into all of the different suggestions. Those are things that you can easily learn through your research. I've got a Facebook group where we talk about these different things and how to eat and the sorts of things that you can do every day. And I also have a little course that I put together. It's called Getting Started with Ayurveda, and it's set out as a 3-week course. And really, it's about taking you through these steps. So the first step is getting to know yourself, understanding what that means, and getting a sense for the reality of how you're living and the patterns that you're living with, so that you know where to start. And then we start on your morning routine, and we work on your evening routine and get those things down and create a process or a template for you to move through those things in an iterative fashion. In other words, what's working for me, what's not, what's working for me, what's not, with the idea of building a template for a routine that you can change slightly here and there from season to season, or as things in your life change, that's going to continually support you. But what's most important, I'll put a link to that in the comments, but what's really most important in terms of getting started with Ayurveda that I really want you to understand, because sometimes we think it looks a certain way, and then we give ourselves a really hard time if we're not following things in a certain way. What's most important, get to know yourself. So learn your dosha, learn what that means about you, what that means your natural strengths and your natural challenges are. And then secondly, build self-care into your day. Start with one small thing. And what I'll do is I'll put in the comments maybe a single suggestion for something that can be great for just about anybody. One small thing to start with. But I invite you, if you're not already, to come on over and join my Facebook group, and I put information in there pretty much on a daily basis to get you thinking, because sometimes getting started with Ayurveda just starts with an intention. It just starts with an intention to do it. It starts with, and so many people have joined the group and they've said, I've heard about Ayurveda, years ago, and I've been slowly moving toward it, and that's beautiful. That's lovely, and that is definitely something to embrace as you being on your path. So if you have any questions, that's really all I've got to share with you today. As I mentioned, I'll put a few links in the comments so that you have a little bit more information. I've got a couple guides and things too, so I'll make sure that you get links to those. If you have any questions for me, if you're starting and you're stuck, I'm happy to answer those questions. If you want to DM me or direct message me, you can. I'm always here to help folks get on their path and figure out how to stay on their path. Because this is Ayurveda is an incredibly powerful tool for living like we love ourselves. And man, do we need it these days. So yeah, if there are any questions, happy to answer those. I will hang out for a couple of more minutes, and there's always a delay, so it'll take a second, and see if there are any questions. I'm so happy that there's folks on. I really appreciate it. It looks like we may have covered everything. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. Watch the comments for some of those suggestions. What's the link to your Facebook group? I will go ahead and put that into the comments so that you can jump onto that free Facebook group. Next week we will be talking about cleansing. So we're just moving into the cleansing season. In Ayurveda, we typically, as part of building self-care into our day and into our lives, we typically do cleanses, and cleanses are beautiful. I'll talk more about that next week. A couple of times a year, in the spring and in the autumn. And so in the northern hemisphere, we're heading into spring, and in the southern hemisphere down here where I am, we're heading into autumn. So now is the time. And I'm going to be running a cleanse in May, at the beginning of May, but next week I'm going to talk to you all about cleansing, what it's about, how, what you need to know. A lot of people do their own cleanses at home, which I think is fantastic, and I know many people who have used a cleanse. The cleanses that I've cleansed with thousands of folks. It's been beautiful. They've used these cleanses as a way of kickstarting their Ayurvedic journey. So next week, same time, same bat channel, I'll be talking a little bit about Ayurvedic cleansing. If you cannot be here and you've got questions about it, go ahead and throw those. You can DM me, or you can put those into a comment somewhere in my various online outlets, and I'll be happy to address that then. Thank you so much once again for your time. I really love connecting with you in this way, and I wish you a wonderful day or evening wherever it is that you are. Namaste.